So today we created a page that surfaces prejudice, and our audience is between 13 and 15-year-olds, and our learning goals are that one, students will understand that race is one factor that contributes to an individual's identity. Two, one's identity has an impact on how they perceive others. And three, one's perceptions of others influences the type of behaviors which they associate with others.
So we have 3 activities for our students to reach their learning goals. The first activity is for students to insert their information and create an ID form once they click submit. This activity will allow students to see messages as to what percentage of the racial population they make up in Singapore. And we have also we have also created it such that the students will be greeted in their mother tongue of the race that they select. So as you can see now, I'm just demonstrating to you how the different greetings look like for the Indian, Malay, and Chinese. The second and third activity involves students to choose 5 traits they associate with each race. So there are 4 races in total: Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others. And for the last activity, students actually are asked to look at different behavior types and decide which races they associate it with. And finally, in order to help them consolidate all their learning, we actually came up with reflection questions that took them through the various activities, linked them together, and helped them to see how they actually do have prejudices, which they might not be aware of. The summary of learning points which you see here only appear after the submit button is clicked, and we did this on purpose because we didn't want the students to be aware of what the activities they were engaging in were actually supposed to identify and surface, because many times our prejudices and stereotypes are actually unconscious.
And implicit. Okay, so now we will move on to the code. So in activity 2 and 3, they're combined when trying to collect data. So Jim provided us with ideas on how we should collect data from the form. Once we had understood his logic and the code he has shared, thank you, we decided to take on the challenge to create our version of the code, as we recognized that we would not always have him, or you in this case, here with us to help us. So now, Maria?
So for this second part, and as we did with all of them, we thought first of what's the logic behind each part. So we thought about what feedback we wanted the kids to receive and what the input they will give. So for this second part, we started by doing an array, a word bank, that it had all the possible answers. So the first 5 are actually the positive words, and the last 5 are the negative. We did this because we wanted to use it further in our code. With the help of Jin, we created an object that had 4 arrays, one for each race, and it would store the student's answer. We also created 4 variables to store the scores of each race. And we also came up with, with Jin's help, with a submit form function. So this submit form function takes the student input, in this case specifically with the ID of Chinese, and it would take the ones they checked and it would put it in the array for Chinese. It would push it in, and then it would call the score function to get the score. We did this function 4 times for Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others. And then we work with the function get score that use as a parameter a score and the student's answer. So we created a for loop that would stop in the length of that array, that in this case is 5, and it would go into an if else, and this if, the condition is if the answer in that index is any of the first 5 answers, then the score would get a +1, else a -1. And we know that the first 5 are the positive words. And then for the feedback we would give the students, we created another function. And it started with a reset, because if they wanted to change their answer, then they could. And later we had a specific message that stated that this is the feedback for the second activity, and then then we made if else statements by each score for each race. So for example, for the Chinese race, if it was greater than 0, then it would get the feedback that you have associated more positive traits with Chinese, else you have associated more negative traits with Chinese. So it would get, if it got a negative score, then they would receive that.
So to simplify our task, because our brains hurted for after a while, we changed the options available for activity 3 from the 4 races to simply your race and other races, which you can see right there. And Jin provided us with ideas. She laid in calculating the many possible scores that students could achieve based on their options, which would affect the return feedback. We hope to eventually change this to the 4 races to allow for this activity to surface more accurate detection of prejudices.
Our key takeaway from this project was the importance of working out the logic of the code before even attempting to write anything. We probably spent about half the amount of time arguing about how the code should be written out, and we actually finished using one entire whiteboard marker for this. But eventually, once that logic was sound and we were on board on the same page, it was a lot easier for us to write the code out. So it was really crucial to the success of this project. We also managed to work on the toaster in this manner, and we hope that you will enjoy trying out this activity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.